Otar, once our chieftain, glorious in battle, fair in judgment, but those days ended in pain. Dark voices whispered into Otar's mind. Nobility shouted down the once good, now craven priest. So we have already learned about the dragon priests and their tyrannical rule over the Nords of old, but there is more to be unearthed here. Some of the most powerful dragon priests in existence lay in wait for us to discover them, and their ancient secrets. And a catastrophic war left no life unaltered. It appeared at first during this war that man was doomed to fail. Their enemies were strong, capable, and wielded great weapons and magic. I mean, they were up against dragons. Ultimately, against all odds, the forces of man rose up and defeated their foes. The dragon priests and surviving cultists were forced into hiding and prepared elaborately for the inevitable return of their dragon rulers. The 8 priests who were chosen to wear a mask of power would be incarcerated, just as the others were, trapped in a tomb until awoken by whoever dared to enter their dwellings. These chosen few held immense power, which was dictated by the nature of their mask. To acquire these masks, one must be willing to risk their own life to kill the priest which bears its name. Hevnoraak, Croesus, Morokei, Nahkriin, Otar, Ragot, Bolung, and Bolung all play an important role in the dragon cult and have their own stories to tell, and all of them are rich with mystery. Otar was said to be a good and impartial ruler whose prowess in battle brought him many victories. All of that changed though, as Otar slipped slowly into the dark and murky waters of insanity. To his followers he earned the title Otar the Mad, as during these dark days of insanity he became a malicious and torturous ruler. It is said that this was the exploit of dark magic, a lord corrupted by someone with unclear purposes. 2 Nords were sent to destroy Otar, and when they failed, they instead trapped him in his tomb. The city which Otar ruled, Ragbald, was abandoned, but the 2 Nords who locked his tomb remained there to ensure he was never to be set free. Bolung actually served under Otar for years until the Dragon War was initiated. His fate awaited him at the top of the throat of the world, as he was brutally murdered there by a rebelling Nordic warrior in the war. It is likely for this reason that he has no temple dedicated to him. Ironically, he seemed to have been the only dragon priest to actually defend Alduin at the top of the mountain. Hevnoraak was a brutal and ruthless ruler in life, with a way about him that struck fear into the hearts of his people. Children, warriors, nobles, they all became puppets of this twisted ruler. It wasn't just his charisma which made those around him quake with fear and do his bidding. It was dark magic. You see, Hevnoraak practiced a secret form of mind control magic, which could enthrall his subjects into an endless and invincible army. Of course, as the power-hungry leader he was, Hevnoraak wasn't satisfied. He obsessed profusely over the assurance that he would be resurrected after death. He was to transform into a powerful lich with an unassailable army at his command. With his plan set in motion, his blood was to become his again after his death in a secret ritual to transcend him into something else. Something even more sinister. The word glorious in the dragon tongue is Morokei, the dragon priest which the archmage Savas Aren had come in contact with years ago when he first explored the Labyrinthian. The archmage traveled through the Labyrinthian with a group of his apprentices, and while most fell prey to the ruin's devious traps and dangerous enemies, Savas actually sacrificed 2 of his apprentices to seal Morokei's tomb. The dragon priest was so powerful that the archmage couldn't even come close to defeating him. So instead, he wasted away the lives of his apprentices in order to hold the priest at bay. Nahkriin is another dragon priest which gave way to a story encased in shadow and enigma, as he holds the dragon priest staff, which is the key to open Sovngarde's portal. Alduin himself actually gave Nahkriin the task of protecting the staff, and so he was clearly a trusted member of the dragon cult. While Nahkriin seems to be an imperative part of the cult, we know very little about who he was as a person before his death. After the war was over, nothing was left over from the dragons. Bones were buried, temples desecrated, priests murdered, and hundreds of years of history were simply erased from Skyrim. All that was left was Ragot. He led a small following in a monastery known as Forlhost High in the Jurl Mountains. He and his followers lived virtually undisturbed for years, until King Harald, the first Nordic king to arise and unite the North under one banner, initiated the attack. He was determined to rid the world completely of the dragon cult and sought to murder every last member standing. The fight went on for weeks, as it was very challenging for the soldiers to even reach the area. But when they finally did, Ragot found himself and his following trapped. Instead of awaiting the soldiers to come and slaughter them, the dragon priest devised a plan which would allow him to survive at the cost of his servants. He planned out a mass suicide. Most servants would consume a poison developed from deathbell, women and children included, that would instantly kill them. The plan was for the sight of the suicide to be so horrendous, seeing even the children just laying there dead, that the Nordic soldiers wouldn't dare to venture deeper into the monastery in fears of a never-ending river of corpses. The plan worked, and Ragot was allowed to be buried in peace for the Drago ritual to be completed. After the ordeal, Ragot remained sealed in his tomb. But it is said that if you defeat him and then return to his monastery a year later, Ragot will appear, nameless and devoid of his mask, to fight again. After vanquishing each dragon priest and collecting all 8 masks, a 9th is required in order to unlock a curious secret found in the ruins of Brumjunar. The 9th mask is a wooden one that can be located in the Labyrinthian by a skeleton. There is no history behind this mask other than the note found beside it. Could it hold some kind of unknown magic? A spell placed upon it by enchanters of old, or maybe even the gods themselves, allowing for the wearer to transport to a different moment in time. Perhaps this is merely a sample of the dragon's unending capabilities, as we know they have lived long since before the creation of the Elder Scrolls. They could very well have had access to magic much like those in the scrolls. It is intriguing that this mask remains without a wearer. It is likely that it is simply too powerful for one person to control. Placing the rest of the masks on the shrine will reveal Konarek, which literally translates into warlord in the dragon tongue. There's no obvious reason why this mask is hidden so well, or why it is so special compared to the others, but even the aesthetics of Konarek are different than the 8 that were previously collected. It seems more regal and high status, giving it the impression that the wearer of this mask was sort of a dignitary or leader among the other priests. Thousands of years ago, a dragon priest trader gained knowledge of a forbidden magic from a black book and sought to manipulate it for his own benefit. A second priest, that we now know as the Guardian, heard word of these events and pleaded with him to stop, but the trader was already consumed by the corrupt power of the book. To protect himself and his followers, the Guardian waged war on the trader, and an epic battle commenced. Dragon priest against dragon priest, the two fought with every ounce of strength and magicka they could muster. During their war, legend says that it caused so much devastation that a large piece of land was severed from Skyrim's mainland. This land actually became the island of Solstheim. But what of the loser of this fight? Had it not been for Hermaeus Mora, the traitor would have been killed instantly for his crimes. But he had pledged himself to the Daedric Lord and thus was protected. But the question is, why would a dragon priest pledge himself to a Daedric Lord? Well, the answer is the traitor wanted to destroy his dragon superiors, and he needed all the help he could muster for this task. Hevnoraak was willing to give him the edge he needed, a power that could destroy not only any dragon, but Alduin himself. We all know it as Dragonrend, the shout that started a revolution, coming from the traitor himself who sold his soul to Hevnoraak just for Dragonrend. It is in fact Miraak, the first Dragonborn. Now, I've always been very interested in the whole Dragon Priest section of Skyrim, mainly because there's just so many little secrets that the game doesn't tell you, right? I mean, to find these things out, you have to either read the books that you find along the way, or you have to really talk to everyone that has anything to do with these dungeons, the little side quests, just people in capital cities. And that's what I find so interesting, that there's a lot of things that you don't really know, and then even after that, there are a lot of things that you have to assume, right? And that's why I find so intriguing. For example, the fact that usually when you go into a dungeon and you fight a dragon priest, you don't really get to know anything about it. You enter a dungeon, and maybe there's a storyline related to it, maybe it's not, but you go into the end, a dragon priest comes out of his sarcophagus, and then you kill him, right? And that's it. But they don't say anything, right? They don't do anything, they don't say anything, they just come out and attack you. And as if they were not really real people, right? It just feels like they're maybe just like a zombie or something without a brain of its own. And that's interesting to me. And the reason why that's interesting to me is because there are actually two dragon priests that addresses the Dragonborn. Only two of them even notices the Dragonborn enough to talk to them. And those are Nahkriin and Morokei. And the interesting part here is that there are actually reasons why they do that. And I find that very interesting. It feels like these two dragon priests are somehow more developed than the other dragon priests. Maybe even that they were the only ones that actually came out of the reanimation spell on time, or they were the only ones that were just simply ready to be taken out of it, right? So you have Morokei. Now Morokei means glorious in Dragon tongue, right? He's supposed to be like this magnificent fella, and one reason to believe so is that he's the one that's actually buried in the Labyrinthian, which is supposed to be the capital city of the Dragon Priests, right? It's the main central place where they would get together and do all this awesome priest stuff, right? But then on top of that, he was already out before the events of Skyrim even began, right? He fought Savas Aren, the Archmage, which is supposed to be like the strongest magician in our time, well, as far as Skyrim is concerned, and he easily defeated it, right? Not just that, but he couldn't even, he had to sacrifice his fellows just to keep him alive. Now that's amazing, right? And then when you fight this guy, he actually addresses you as if he understood your presence there. And then Nahkriin also does that. He addresses your presence, and he's the only other one that is actually outside when you defeat him. These are the only two guys that don't come out of their sarcophagus when you fight them. Now, the thing about Nahkriin that I find so fascinating is that he is the only one that we have factual evidence that actually interacted with Alduin after Alduin came out of his time tear, right? Alduin gave him the staff that he's carrying and told him to protect the portal from any invaders. Right, we know that Alduin did that, so we know that Alduin had contact with him, which probably meant that Alduin himself revived him, which means that that is probably the reason why he's more developed than the other dragon priests, which is the reason why he can actually talk to you when you encounter, why he acknowledges your presence and tells you to get the fuck out. And that's interesting to me, that the other dragon priests just probably weren't ready to be taken out of their coma, and that's why they were so maybe skeletal. You know, maybe just with their zombie-like patterns. And that is very interesting to me. So that's just one example of why I think this is all so interesting, because there's a lot of little things that you can deduce just from reading the lore and understanding and paying attention to just those tiny little details that you find along the way. And then outside of that, there's all the drama and all the story behind every single dragon priest, right? Like, for example, the fact that Volsung was the only one that actually died in the war. It's very interesting to me because you see the guys like Otar, which the guy had his own city, and the reason he died was just because his people rebelled against them and killed him, right? And then you have Ragot, which I mean, he had his own following, and then he died literally like 134 years after the war was over, right? I mean, they lost, and he just kept them going. We know that Hevnoraak had an amazing army. He mind controlled his subjects and created this like amazing army, right? And he just, instead of fighting, it seems like he just entered his own sarcophagus and decided, all right, well, I'll come back later, and you know, whatever happens happens, right? But then Bolung actually died in the throat of the world fighting Nords, right? And we know that that's where Alduin actually ended up dying, where the bulk of the battle was focused, right? And that's where Volsung died. And he ended up being the only one that died without an actual temple dedicated to him, and that's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. But those little stories and like it feels like dramas about each dragon priest's life. I find that so interesting. But I want to know what you guys think about all this. What do you find particularly more interesting, or what have you read or found out in the video games? Maybe it could be a superstition, a curiosity, something that you feel might be true, or not necessarily. I want to know what you guys think. What is the thing that caught the most attention for you? For me personally, it's the fact that for some reason it feels like the magic that the dragons had was kind of overpowered when you really think about it. I mean, we're talking about the fact that they found a way to create perpetual energy but not, you see, the dwarves created perpetual energy, right? We know that. But we're talking about a perpetual magical energy, because we see the Draugrs waking up every morning and giving their energy to the dragon priests without any kind of energy core or anything for that matter. They just regen their energy as they sleep, and then they wake up and give their energy to the priest, and that's it. There's no core, there's no sigil, no guide doing rituals. It just happens, and that's crazy. And then you have the thing with the wooden mask, where the mask literally transports you back in time, right? So they had time travel. I feel like there's a lot there that is not being explained, and I find that extremely fascinating, that they had this power, right? I mean, we're talking about creatures from the time of the Elder Scrolls that they know this like secret types of magic, and still they lost. Well, you know, they used their own power against them. But I find that the most fascinating, just how amazing these creatures were. But let me know what caught your attention, and I'll see you guys next time.